Hey guys, tonight we begin with ancient Rome, a civilization where you're expected to follow rules so specific, so baroque, so mind-numbingly particular about the most mundane details of human existence that you think someone was pranking you from across the centuries. Rules about how many guests you can invite to dinner. Rules about what colors you can wear and whether your wife is allowed to leave the house without a written note. Rules about which direction you walk on certain streets. Rules about how you tie your shoes. Rules about which hand you use to eat. Rules about how loud you can laugh in public. And yet, and here's where it gets weird, all of it made perfect sense. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel. Now, dim the lights. Put your phone away. Settle into whatever surface is holding you right now. We're about to spend the next couple of hours walking through the streets of Rome as someone who understands, deep in their bones, why the most ridiculous sounding rules are actually the difference between civilization and absolute chaos. Please like and subscribe our channel. Pause. Take a slow breath. The kind of breath where you feel it all the way down. Then exhale like you're letting the entire day drain out of your body. Again and again. Feel your shoulders drop. Feel the tension in your jaw soften. That's right. Imagine, if you will, that you're standing in the streets of Rome around the year 100 AD. Not in a textbook, not watching a documentary, not scrolling through some historical website on your phone. You're actually there. Your feet are on ancient stone. The air hits your face. Warm, yes, but not the clean warmth of a summer afternoon. This is thick air, dense air that has passed through thousands of lungs before reaching yours. It smells like roasted meat from the food vendors lining the street. It smells like the Tiber River, which is not pleasant exactly, but present, undeniable, the smell of a city that's existed in the same location for 600 years and hasn't fully figured out what to do about sewage. Beneath that is the smell of stone dust from construction. Rome is always building something. Always. The sound of hammers echoes across the city. And underneath everything is the smell of humanity itself. Sweat, oil from the gymnasiums, the faint copper scent of old coins, the scent of bread baking in communal ovens, the smell of fish from the markets. This is Rome. This is what civilization smells like. The stones beneath your feet are worn smooth. Not worn soft. Smooth. Smooth the way stone becomes after centuries of feet walking across it. Millions of feet. Every citizen who's ever walked these streets has contributed a tiny bit of wear. You're walking on the compressed time of an entire civilization. Your feet, with each step, are walking on the footsteps of emperors and slaves, senators and servants, the wealthy and the desperate. And the stone remembers all of them. It remembers their weight. It remembers their destination. It remembers the direction of their movement. The stone is a living history, and you are walking on it. Pause. There's a man walking beside you, not literally, but in your mind. His name is Gaius. He's not the emperor. He's not a senator. He's a Roman citizen of moderate means. Maybe a lawyer. Maybe a merchant. Maybe something in between. Gaius is the kind of person who understands every rule in Rome not because he studied them formally, not because someone handed him a rule book, but because his life depends on it. Breaking the wrong rule in Rome doesn't mean a fine. It doesn't mean community service. It doesn't mean you have to go to court and argue your case. Breaking the wrong rule in Rome means exile. Exile means you lose your home, your property, your status, your place in society. Or it could mean confiscation of property. Or worse. And so Gaius walks carefully through his day, acutely aware of the invisible boundaries that govern nearly every action. There's also Livia. She's Gaius's wife. She's not allowed to wear purple. That color is reserved for magistrates and people of much higher status. She's not allowed to attend political meetings. She's not allowed, technically, to leave the house without proper reason and without a companion. She's not allowed to conduct business in her own name. She's not allowed to own property without male approval. And yet, and this is the thing that makes Rome interesting, that makes it so much more complex than the surface rules suggest, she somehow manages the entire household. She makes complex decisions about servants. She negotiates with merchants. She controls the budget. She shapes her children's values. She influences her husband through subtle persuasion. She wields more actual power than you'd think by just reading the laws. She's confined and powerful at the same time. It's a contradiction that's so fundamental to Roman society that nobody even bothers to comment on it anymore. Then there's Marcus, Gaius' son. Marcus is 20 years old, which means is at that exact age where he thinks the rules are completely absurd, completely ridiculous. His clothing announces his status. The style of his toga indicates whether he's married or single. The color indicates his wealth. The way he ties his hair tells people whether he's been to university, whether he's traveled, whether he's served in the military. Marcus finds all of this ridiculous. He doesn't yet understand that these seemingly arbitrary restrictions are part of a complex system designed to make a massive, chaotic civilization of millions of people function without constant violence erupting in the streets. He thinks the rules are oppressive. He hasn't yet realized they are liberating. And then there's Cato, an older man, maybe 60 years old, which is ancient by the standards of the time. Cato has lived through different emperors. He has seen different reforms. He has watched different iterations of Roman law be created and destroyed and recreated. He remembers when certain rules were created, often because something had gone catastrophically wrong. He remembers riots. He remembers when a food shortage led to specific laws about grain storage. He remembers when a fire broke out because the rules about how buildings should be constructed were not strict enough. He remembers when a woman's property rights were suddenly changed, creating chaos in the inheritance system. He knows something that Gaius is beginning to grasp and Marcus hasn't learned yet. Rules are the ghosts of past disasters. Every rule exists because someone, somewhere, at some point in history, suffered because that rule didn't exist. Pause. Here's what makes Rome different from every other civilization you've ever studied. Rome understood something fundamental about human beings. Rules don't exist because someone enjoys restricting freedom. That's what most people think. That's what Marcus thinks. But Rome learned through 500 years of trial and error that rules exist because people are terrible at managing shared spaces without them. People are terrible at cooperating without structure. People are terrible at trusting each other without frameworks. Rome had learned this lesson through 500 years of blood and chaos and suffering, and by the time it reached its height, Rome had created a legal and social system so comprehensive that it could coordinate the behavior of millions of people across 3 continents without modern communication, without transportation faster than a horse, without any of the technology that we assume is necessary for organizing large groups of human beings. The rules seem bizarre until you understand what problem each one was solving. It's like reading the instruction manual for a really complicated piece of equipment and thinking, why would anyone need a rule that specifically says you can't use a blue lever with a red switch simultaneously? And then you press the blue lever with the red switch simultaneously, and the entire device catches fire and explodes, and everything you've built falls apart. That's Rome. Rome is full of very specific rules because Rome has already had all the fires. Rome has already had the explosions. Rome has learned every single lesson through suffering. The sun is moving low in the sky as you stand in the forum. This is the heart of Rome. This is where everything happens. Politics, business, social interaction, crime, justice, gossip, deals, betrayals, and occasionally someone getting so angry with someone else that violence erupts and has to be broken up by magistrates who've learned through experience exactly how to diffuse situations without escalating them. And every single interaction happening in this forum is governed by rules. Visible rules and invisible rules. Written rules and rules that everyone understands, but nobody bothers to write down because it would be like writing down the rule that you should breathe air instead of water. The forum is divided by invisible lines. There are areas where senators gather to discuss political matters. There are areas where merchants conduct business. There are areas where women are allowed to go and areas where they definitely are not. These lines are not marked with rope or paint. They are simply understood. Everyone knows where they're supposed to be. Everyone respects these boundaries. If someone violates them, nobody needs to physically stop them. Everyone will simply understand that they've broken a rule, and they'll be treated accordingly. The person will be avoided. The person will be criticized. The person's reputation will suffer. That's enforcement enough. You notice a young military officer standing near the steps of a temple, and he looks uncomfortable. He's still wearing his military uniform, which is wrong. There's a rule, not written, not explicit, but understood with the force of law, that military officers cannot wear their uniforms within the pomerium, the sacred boundary of the city itself. The rule exists because Rome learned, through painful experience, what happens when military men with their uniforms and their weapons march through the city. It looks like a coup. It creates fear. It suggests that the army might be taking control of the government. It suggests that the military might be more powerful than the civilian government. So Rome made a rule. Your military identity stays outside the city. Inside the city, you're a citizen first, a soldier second. You shed your uniform like you shed an old skin. Within moments, a magistrate notices a uniformed officer. The magistrate doesn't yell or create a scene. There's a rule about that too. Public shaming is counterproductive. Instead, he walks over and says something quietly. The officer's face goes red. He understands immediately that he's made a mistake, broken a rule that everyone else seems to know instinctively. He understands immediately that he's marked himself as someone who doesn't understand Roman society. He bows apologetically and hurries away to change his clothes. The rule has been enforced not through punishment, not through violence, but through simple social correction. And that's how most of Rome's rules actually work. Not through force, but through shame. Through the deep understanding that you've done something wrong and everyone knows it. That knowledge is punishment enough. Somewhere a man is thinking about wearing purple when he doesn't have permission to, and somewhere else a man is deciding against it. That's the rule working. Not a cop, not a law enforcement officer, not someone with a weapon. Just a voice in his head saying, "No, you can't do that. Everyone will know, and they will judge you, and the judgment will be deserved because you will have violated something fundamental about the way society works." Pause. You're beginning to understand something as you walk through Rome. The rules are not separate from the civilization. The rules are the civilization. Remove the rules and you don't get freedom. You get chaos. You get violence erupting over tiny slights. You get people unable to trust each other because there are no agreements that matter. You get people unable to conduct business because contracts mean nothing. You get people unable to walk through the streets without fear because there are no standards of conduct. The rules create the possibility of trust. The rules create the possibility of commerce. The rules create the possibility of peace. And Rome, understanding this deeply, built its entire system on the foundation of rules. Not written rules alone, although Rome had plenty of those, but rules that became so deeply embedded in the culture that people followed them not out of fear of punishment, but out of genuine moral conviction. People in Rome felt shame if they broke the rules, even if no one found out. People felt pride in following the rules properly. The rules had moved from external constraints to internal values. And that's the genius of Roman civilization. That's how a society of millions manages to function without modern technology, without a police state, without constant surveillance, without cameras on every corner recording every action. As evening approaches, as the sun begins its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the forum, you feel the weight of all these rules settling on you like a blanket. It's not a suffocating weight. It's not the weight of oppression. It's a comforting weight. The weight of knowing exactly what's expected. The weight of knowing exactly where you stand. The weight of knowing exactly what will happen if you step out of line. The weight of being part of a system. The weight of being part of a civilization. The weight of being part of something larger than yourself. Take another breath. Deeper this time. Feel your shoulders relax even more. Let your jaw soften. Let your eyes grow heavy. The day in Rome is ending, and you're beginning to understand why, in a world full of rules, a man like Gaius can sleep well at night. Pause. You wake. The light is not bright. In Rome, even in daylight, the light that filters through your windows is filtered, softened, not harsh. The architecture of Roman homes is designed to turn the light inward, to make light serve the interior space rather than pouring in aggressively from outside. Your eyes adjust slowly. You're aware of the smell of oil lamps, the faint acrid scent of burned olive oil from last night's light. It's not unpleasant. It's familiar. It means home. It means comfort. Beneath that is the smell of your servant preparing breakfast 3 rooms away. Smoke, yes, but also herbs. Mint, rosemary, maybe some fish already starting to cook for later in the day. The kitchen fires are warming. Your back aches when you try to sit up. You're not young anymore. Your joints protest. You stretch slowly, feeling your shoulders pop, feeling the muscles in your legs wake up after hours of rest. This is the first rule of your morning. Listen to your body. Understand what it's telling you. Your body is not your enemy. Your body is a machine, and like all machines, it has requirements. Water, movement, warmth, Nutrition. These are not luxuries. These are necessities. Pause. Titus is your slave. He's been with your family for many years, nearly 20 years, you think. And he moves through your bedroom with the efficiency of someone who's done this thousands of times. He's done this every morning for nearly 20 years. He helps you from your bed, not because you can't do it yourself, but because this is his job. This is his role. This is his place in the structure of your household. Titus knows what comes next. He knows what you'll want before you know. He knows how you like your wash water, warm, but not too warm. Lukewarm, actually, perfect for waking up the body without shocking it. He knows that you prefer to stand for your washing rather than sitting. He knows that you'll want your favorite oil applied to your skin afterward, the oil infused with herbs from the garden. He knows all of this not because you've told him in words. You have, of course, in the early days, but now you haven't had to say anything for years. He simply knows. This is what 15 years together creates. This is what routine creates. The water is brought in a bronze bowl. It steams slightly. Titus pours it slowly, and you wash your face, your hands, your arms. The water is clean. This is important. Rome has rules about water. Specific rules about which water is clean enough for washing, which water is clean enough for drinking, which water has to be boiled before use, which water is dangerous. Titus knows these rules. Everyone in the city knows these rules. You follow them without thinking, the way you follow the rule about breathing. There's a moment, as you wash, when you notice the texture of the water, how it flows, how it feels against your skin, how it's somehow both heavy and light at the same time. Water in Rome is like this. It's heavy with minerals from the aqueducts. It's heavy with meaning. Water is life. Water is commerce. Water is infrastructure. Water is one of Rome's greatest achievements, and yet you take it so completely for granted that you barely notice it. You splash it on your face without thinking. But if you were in any other city, if you were traveling outside Rome, you'd notice. You'd miss it. You'd remember how fortunate you are to live in a place where water is abundant, clean, available at all times. Pause. Now comes a part that most people would find ridiculous. Your clothing. You cannot simply dress yourself in whatever you want. There are rules. Specific rules. Rules about which color is appropriate for which day. Rules about which style of toga is appropriate for which social situation. Rules about what your servant should wear. Rules about what free men should wear. Rules about what women should wear. Rules about what children should wear. Rules about which items indicate which status. Rules about which materials are appropriate. Rules about which patterns are allowed. Your clothing is a language. Everyone in Rome is fluent in this language, or they pretend to be, which amounts to the same thing. Titus brings your toga. It's not fancy. You're wealthy enough to have a decent one, but not so wealthy that you can wear the finest purple-dyed wool every day. Purple dye is expensive. It comes from tiny sea snails. Thousands of snails are needed to produce even a small amount of dye. So purple is reserved for people of very high status. The toga in Titus's hands is white wool, good quality, well maintained. It's clean. The fabric is soft from years of use and careful washing. The toga is a complex garment, not like the simple tunic you wore to sleep. It requires careful arrangement, proper folds, the right amount of material showing. If you wear it wrong, you announce to the world that you're ignorant, that you don't understand Roman society, that you're not quite civilized enough, that you're a barbarian, essentially, dressed up in Roman clothes but without understanding Roman culture. The toga arrangement is not quick. It takes perhaps 5 minutes. Titus moving with the deliberate precision of someone who's done this 10,000 times. The fabric is folded in a specific way. The first fold creates the back panel. The second fold creates the right side. Then it goes around your body, under your left arm, and across your chest and back. The way the fabric folds is crucial. The way it drapes is crucial. Too much shows and you look foolish. Too little and you look poor. The perfect amount announces that you understand the rules, that you belong in Roman society, that you're civilized. You watch Titus work. His fingers move with precision. His eyes are focused. He's not thinking about each step. His body knows the steps. His hands know the steps. This is muscle memory developed over 15 years. You've watched him do this so many times that you know the exact sequence. You could almost do it yourself, although it would take you twice as long and probably not be as perfect as Titus's work. This is not something that Titus resents. This is his job. This is his role. He's good at it. And in Rome, being good at your role is almost as important as being alive. There's a rule about this too, an unwritten rule, a cultural expectation deeply embedded in Roman society. You should take pride in whatever role you occupy in society, whether you're a senator or a slave, whether you're arranging togas or ruling the empire. You should do your job with excellence. You should care about doing it well. Titus steps back to examine his work. His eyes scan across your body, checking the arrangement, ensuring that everything is properly placed. He nods slightly, satisfied. The toga is correct. You are correct. You are ready to present yourself to the world. Your daughter appears, asking if you're ready for breakfast. She's young, perhaps 12 years old. She's already learning the rules. She's already internalizing the expectations about how a Roman girl should behave. She's quiet. She's respectful. She greets you properly, not too familiar, not too distant. She moves through the house with an awareness of her role, her place, her function within the family structure. By the time she's your wife's age, these behaviors will be so ingrained that she won't even think about them. She'll simply do them. The rules will have become her nature. You think about what your daughter's life will be like. She'll be educated, but not as extensively as boys are educated. Women don't need the same education that men do in Rome. That's the rule. That's the standard. She'll learn household management, how to organize servants, how to manage accounts, how to make decisions about food and clothing. She'll learn needlework, perhaps some music. She'll learn to read and write, because a woman should be able to manage her household's accounts. She'll learn the rules about proper behavior, about virtue, about what's expected of a Roman woman, about modesty and propriety and the proper way to conduct yourself in public. And then, when she's old enough, maybe 15, maybe 16, maybe older, she'll be married to a man her father chooses. It won't be a marriage based on romantic love. That's not how Rome works. That's not the standard. It will be a marriage based on practical considerations. What family connections does it create? What advantages does it bring? What alliances does it forge? What economic benefits are there? These are the rules of marriage. She'll leave your household and go to live in her husband's household, under his authority, following his rules. And if she's fortunate, her husband will be fair. If she's less fortunate, he could be cool. But either way, she'll have no recourse except perhaps returning to her father's house, and that would be a scandal that would follow her for the rest of her life. This is the world she's been born into. This is the world she'll live in. The rules are not cruel. They're just the way things are. Everyone accepts them because everyone has always lived under them. Breakfast is served. The smell of bread reaches you. Simple bread, baked fresh this morning in the communal ovens. There's the smell of honey, a luxury, but not an excessive one. There's the smell of the wine being mixed with water in the proper ratio. The servant who's doing the mixing is careful. The ratio matters. Too much wine and you're drinking like a barbarian. Too much water and you're not drinking wine at all. You're drinking flavored water, essentially. The proper ratio is 3 parts water to 1 part wine. Maybe 4 parts water to 1 part wine if it's a particularly strong wine. The proper ratio is an art form, and the person preparing it is aware of this, is taking pride in doing it correctly. You break bread with your family. The texture is good, not too soft, not too hard. There's a slight char on the crust where it's been toasted slightly, the way you like it. You dip it in a small bowl of olive oil mixed with herbs. The oil is good quality. One of the benefits of living in Rome is that oil is available. It's affordable for people of your status. You think about the olive groves in the countryside, the workers pressing the olives, the organization required to bring oil into the city, the rules that govern how oil can be stored and sold. Somewhere, a farmer is producing olive oil according to certain practices. He knows that if the quality is poor, he won't be able to sell it in Rome. He'll be stuck with it. He'll lose money. The rules about quality enforcement have created an incentive for excellence. Your wife sits nearby, eating a smaller breakfast than you. There's a rule about this too. Women should eat less than men. Women should be more modest in their consumption. This is the rule. This is the expectation. Livia follows this rule. She eats perhaps half of what you eat. She drinks less wine. She takes smaller portions. This is not something that makes her resentful. It's simply what's expected. It's what's right. It's part of being a proper Roman woman. She's internalized this rule so completely that she probably doesn't even notice it anymore. As you eat, you're aware of the slow transition from private life to public life. You're aware that in a few minutes, you'll step out of this house and into the world of rules that governs Rome. You're aware that every gesture, every word, every movement will be observed and judged. But you're not anxious about this. You're prepared. You've been preparing your entire life. The rules are not a burden right now. Right now, sitting at breakfast with your family, the rules simply feel like the natural order of things, the way the world works, the way life is structured. Your daughter mentions something about a friend whose wedding is coming up. This is an interesting topic because weddings in Rome are governed by an intricate set of rules. The rules about when a girl can be married. She must be at least 12 years old, though usually marriages are arranged for older girls. The rules about who can attend the wedding. The rules about what the bride should wear. The rules about the ceremonies that must be performed. The rules about what happens after the wedding. Every single aspect of this most important life transition is governed by rules. You think about your daughter's future wedding. It will happen someday. A man her father chooses will come, arrangements will be made, and she'll leave your household to become part of his household. The rules will govern this transition as they govern everything else. She'll be nervous, perhaps. She'll be uncertain about leaving her family, about entering a new household with a man she might barely know. But the rules will be there to guide her. The rules will tell her what's expected. The rules will make the transition predictable, manageable, survivable. There's a rule that says that the bride's family should give a dowry, a gift of money or property to the groom's family. This rule exists not out of tradition alone, but out of practical economic necessity. A woman leaves her father's household and becomes part of her husband's household. She's no longer part of her father's economic unit. She's no longer contributing to her father's household income. So the father compensates the husband's family for taking on the expense of supporting her, for taking on the legal responsibility, for taking on the social responsibility. The rule makes economic sense. The rule makes the transition financially viable for both families. Your wife is listening to your daughter talk about the upcoming wedding. Livia's face shows a subtle emotion, perhaps remembrance of her own wedding, perhaps anticipation of the day when your daughter will have her own wedding. Livia has been through this transition. She came from another household, another family, into your household. The rules made the transition possible. The rules told her what to expect. The rules gave her a role to play and a way to function in her new family. You realize that you're thinking about the future while sitting in the present, eating breakfast, surrounded by your family, in a household that's organized according to centuries of accumulated rules and customs. This moment right now, this breakfast, this conversation about weddings, this time with your family before you go out into the world. This moment is governed by rules too. There's a rule that says families should eat together in the morning. There's a rule that says you should know what your children are doing and who they're thinking about. There's a rule that says a family is a unit, and the members of a unit should maintain connections, should care about each other, should stay informed about each other's lives. The rule has created the circumstance in which your daughter feels comfortable talking to you about her friend's wedding. The rule has created a structure that allows your family to function as a unit rather than as four separate people happening to live in the same house. The rule has made possible the intimacy that exists between you and your daughter. As you finish eating, you're aware that this particular moment, this breakfast with your family, is coming to an end. Soon you'll leave. Soon you'll be in the public sphere, following different rules, playing a different role. But right now, you're in the private sphere, with your family. And the rules that govern this space are rules about care, about connection, about the bonds that hold a family together. Pause. 30-minute mark. Begin black screen. You enter the forum, and immediately you're operating within a specific set of rules that govern how the forum functions. The forum is not just a place. The forum is a mechanism, a machine. And like all machines, it has rules about how it operates. Specific rules, detailed rules. Rules that seem simple on the surface but have enormous implications. The first rule, When you arrive at the forum, you must greet people in order of their status. You cannot skip anyone. You cannot treat someone of lower status with disrespect by ignoring them. But you also cannot treat someone of much higher status as if they were your equal. You must calibrate your greeting precisely. This is not a skill you learn from studying a manual. This is a skill you learn from living, from watching your father, from making mistakes when you were young, and learning from the social consequences, from being ignored when you greeted someone too familiarly, from being snubbed when you didn't show enough respect. This skill is embedded in your bones now. An older man approaches you. Cato, a senator, a man of considerable power and status. You greet him. Your greeting is respectful but not obsequious. You acknowledge his status without groveling. You don't scrape. You don't beg for his attention. This dance, this calibration of relationship and respect, is one of the most important skills in Rome. And you perform it flawlessly because you've been performing it since childhood. Cato nods to you. He wants to discuss some business matter. Nothing too serious. Just something that needs to be done. You walk together through the forum. And as you walk, you're both aware of how people perceive you walking together. If someone of much lower status or Cato greeting you as a friend, if they saw him walking with you, talking with you, they would know you had value. They would know you had connections. They would know you were someone worth taking seriously. If someone of much higher status saw the same interaction, they might wonder what you had that made you worth the time of a senator. The simple act of walking together communicates things. Cato knows this. You know this. Everyone observing knows this. This is a forum as a theater, where every movement is a performance, where every greeting is a line of dialogue, where every interaction is part of a larger narrative about status, power, and relationships. Pause. You reach a money changer stall. Hey, the rules become very specific and very practical. There's a rule about how much a money changer can charge for his services. There's a rule that says a money changer cannot refuse to change money for any citizen. There's a rule about honesty. The money changer must weigh the coins correctly, must test their purity, must be honest about what is giving you and taking from you. These are not suggestions. These are law. These rules exist because Rome learned, through painful experience, what happens when you allow money changers unlimited freedom. They cheat people. They mix fake coins in with real ones. They underweight the coins they give you. They find every single way to enrich themselves at the expense of everyone else. There are stories. A money changer who mixed so much fake coin into good coin that merchants in the forum stopped trusting him. His business collapsed. He lost everything. He had to leave the city. Or worse. So Rome created rules. Specific, detailed, enforceable rules. And Rome empowered magistrates to enforce them. Magistrates who walk through the forum regularly, observing, watching, making sure the rules are followed. The punishment could be severe, not just a fine, possibly confiscation of goods, possibly exile from the forum, possibly something worse. The money changer you're working with today knows this. He knows that his business depends on following these rules. He knows that his reputation depends on following these rules. One accusation of dishonesty and his business is finished. And so he is scrupulously honest. He weighs the coins carefully. You watch him do it. You watch his face concentrate on the task. You watch him take his responsibilities seriously. He tests their purity using a small stone and a testing solution. He checks each coin. He gives you exactly what you're owed. No shortcuts. No tricks. No hidden charges. The dip of the scale. The weight of the coins. The way they fall into your palm. These are the mechanical elements of a system that works. The money changer's honesty is not a gift. It's not because he's a good person with a good heart. It's because the rules make honesty his only option. The rule has made him honest, not out of the goodness of his heart, but out of fear of the consequences of dishonesty. And somehow, this mechanical honesty, this enforced virtue, creates trust, creates commerce, creates a possibility of trade, makes civilization possible. Cato conducts his business. The amounts are not enormous. This is not a major transaction, just something that needs to be done. A transfer, a conversion. You watch how he interacts with a money changer. He is courteous, but not overly so. He is firm, but not unkind. He treats the man as someone worthy of respect. But he also makes clear through his bearing and tone that he is a senator and the money changer is a merchant. This status difference matters. The money changer understands this. He responds appropriately. He is respectful without being obsequious. The interaction is smooth because everyone understands the rules and follows them. Because everyone knows the dance. Pause. You continue walking, and you notice the organization of work in the forum. Fullers, people who wash and finish cloth, cannot set up shop in certain areas. Butchers cannot operate in certain places. Blacksmiths must be in specific locations because of fire danger. These rules are not arbitrary. They are practical. They prevent nuisance. They prevent danger. They prevent the problems that arise when too many people live in too close proximity to each other without organization. Rome learned these rules through centuries of trial and error. A disease outbreak traced of butchers processing meat too close to where people lived. New rule: butchers must move. A fire breaks out because a blacksmith is too close to wooden buildings. New rule: blacksmiths must maintain distance. A smell so overwhelming that people flee from a neighborhood. New rule: fullers must process their cloth in designated areas, away from where people eat, away from where people sleep. As you continue walking through the forum, you observe an interaction that illustrates a different kind of rule. A young man, perhaps a merchant's son, perhaps someone new to the forum, has just committed a minor social error. He has greeted someone of significantly higher status in too familiar a manner. He has acted as though he and the man were equals. He has overstepped. The response is immediate and subtle. The man of higher status has simply turned slightly away, has acknowledged the greeting with a barest nod, has moved on, has not engaged further. The young man's face goes slightly red. He understands immediately that he has made a mistake, broken a rule, announced through his too familiar greeting that he doesn't quite understand his place in the social hierarchy. Within moments, the young man is seeking out someone, perhaps an older merchant who mentors him, and clearly asking about what he should have done differently. The mentor is patient. He explains. The rule is not written down, but it's understood with perfect clarity. When greeting someone of significantly higher status, you show respect through distance, through formality, through a certain reserve. Too much familiarity is presumptuous. It suggests that you think you're equal to someone you're not equal to. It's a kind of arrogance, even if it's unintentional. The young man nods, understanding. He's learned a rule. He's learned not just through punishment. No one yelled at him. No one struck him. No one fined him. He's learned through the subtle social feedback of being ignored, of being made to understand that he's done something wrong. This is how the vast majority of Roman rules are enforced, not through dramatic punishment, but through social pressure, through shame, through the internal understanding that you violated a norm and you need to correct your behavior. The next time, he'll greet someone of high status differently. He'll remember this moment. You think about how many thousands of times this happens in Rome every single day. How many times people make small mistakes, receive subtle feedback, adjust their behavior accordingly. How many times the rules are reinforced not through explicit correction, but through the quiet acknowledgement that someone's behavior was out of line. This constant, low-level enforcement of rules through social pressure is what keeps Rome functioning. It's not efficient in the way a police state might be efficient. A police state with cameras everywhere, with officers on every corner. It's actually far more efficient because it doesn't require an authority figure to monitor every single interaction. The enforcement is distributed. Everyone is both a rule follower and a rule enforcer. Everyone polices everyone else. Society becomes self-organizing. Pause. You pass by a section of the forum where merchants are selling vegetables. There's a rule about this particular area. Only certain kinds of merchants are allowed to sell here. Vegetable sellers, fruit sellers, people who deal in produce. Butchers are not allowed here. Fishmongers are not allowed here. The separation is based on smell and cleanliness. Produce merchants maintain cleaner stalls. The smell is less offensive. The flies are fewer. So there's a rule that separates them. A butcher's stall is in a different location, far enough away that the smell doesn't reach the produce area. The smell of fresh meat can be strong. It can attract insects. It can contaminate the air. A fishmonger is in yet another location. The organization seems chaotic at first. The forum is not neatly organized into a grid like a modern city. It's more organic. Buildings are where they are. Spaces open up in unexpected places. But there's actually a complex system underlying it. Every type of merchant knows where they're supposed to be. Every type of merchant knows that if they try to set up in the wrong location, they'll be told to leave. Not gently. The magistrates who oversee the forum enforce these unwritten rules. They do so mostly gently, most of the time, just by reminding merchants of where they're supposed to be. But if a merchant is stubborn, if a merchant insists on selling in the wrong place, if a merchant is disrupting business, then the enforcement becomes less gentle. An older merchant, someone who's been selling in the same location for 40 years, is training a younger person, perhaps a son, perhaps an apprentice. You watch them interact. The older merchant is showing the younger one the proper way to arrange the produce, not just how to make it look appealing. That would be simple. But how to arrange it so that the air circulates, so that the produce doesn't spoil as quickly, so that the standards of cleanliness are maintained. There's a rule about this too, though you wouldn't think of it as a rule. It's simply proper practice. It's the correct way to do business. Everyone who's been in business long enough knows it. The older merchant points to a pile of vegetables that's been arranged wrong. The younger one is stacking them too high, too tightly, no space between them. The older merchant shows how to arrange them with space between them, with air circulation, with strategic gaps so that if one vegetable starts to rot, it doesn't immediately contaminate the others. This way, the older merchant says, they last longer. This way, customers trust you more. This way, you make more money. Better produce, longer shelf life, better reputation, more customers, more profit. That's how it works. The rule is practical. The rule makes sense. The rule benefits everyone. The merchant who maintains standards does better business. The customer who gets better produce stays healthy. The community that maintains a clean, healthy marketplace doesn't have disease outbreaks. It's a virtuous cycle. You think about how different this would be from a place where there are no rules, no standards, no enforcement. In a place like that, merchants would stack produce however was most convenient. They'd let it rot. They'd sell spoiled goods to unsuspecting customers. The customers would get sick. Trust would break down. Commerce would collapse. People would stop going to the market. The marketplace would become worthless. Rome has learned this lesson through painful experience. Rome has created rules. Rome has created standards. And Rome enforces them, gently mostly, through social pressure and practical consequences. If you don't follow the standards, you don't get customers. You don't make money. You fail. Somewhere nearby, a magistrate is watching. Not intently. He has other things to do. But he's aware of what's happening in his section of the forum. He's walking through. He's observing. If a merchant started violating the rules too egregiously, if a merchant was selling spoiled produce or allowing excessive filth, if a merchant was cheating customers, the magistrate would intervene. But most of the time, the rules enforce themselves through practice, through tradition, through the fact that merchants who maintain standards do better business than merchants who don't. That's incentive enough. You continue walking through the forum, and you pass by a section where lawyers are arguing cases. There are spaces designated for this, areas where legal disputes are heard, rules about arguments in the forum, specific rules. You can't use profanity. You can't insult your opponent personally. You can't make purely emotional appeals designed to inflame. You can't appeal to people's fear or anger in an attempt to bias them. You have to make your argument based on law and logic, based on evidence and precedent. This rule exists because Rome understands something fundamental. If you allow people to win arguments by being louder, by being meaner, by being more personal, you destroy justice. You've made law into a matter of who can shout the loudest. Justice requires calm deliberation. Justice requires the ability to hear both sides clearly. Justice requires that emotion not overwhelm reason. So Rome created a rule. The lawyer you're watching is making his argument according to the rules. His not being warm or friendly. His being professional. His presenting facts. His citing law. His making logical arguments about why his client should win the case. The opposing lawyer will have the same opportunity. They'll both be judged not on who was louder or meaner or more emotional, but on who made the better argument, who presented the stronger case, who understood the law better. The rule has created a system of justice that, while not perfect, is far better than allowing might to make right. Pause. There's a construction site where a new aqueduct is being built. This is a massive project, requiring coordination of hundreds of workers, precise engineering, enormous expenditure of resources, tons of stone, tons of concrete, precision work. But here's what makes it possible. The rule that says contracts must be honored, that agreements must be kept, that if someone agrees to do something for a certain price, they must do that thing. They must complete it. They must do it properly. Without this rule, the project would collapse into chaos. A contractor could take half the money and abandon the job. Workers could refuse to show up halfway through. Materials could be diverted to other projects. The whole thing would fall apart. Nothing would ever get finished. So Rome has rules about contracts. Rules that say if you enter into an agreement, you have legal obligations. Rules that say if you break those obligations, you can be sued. Rules that say if you lose a suit, you have to pay damages. These rules have created a framework within which enormous projects can be undertaken and completed. The aqueduct being built right now will bring water to Rome for centuries. It will allow the city to grow to unprecedented size. It will make possible all the other developments that turn Rome from a city into an empire. And all of it is built on the foundation of the rule that contracts must be honored, that agreements matter, that you can't just take money and disappear, that you're accountable. You stop for a moment to watch the workers. They are moving in coordinated patterns, each person performing their specific task, all of them working toward a common goal. There are rules about how they work, rules about how many hours they can work in a day, rules about how much they must be paid, rules about what materials can be used, rules about engineering standards, rules about safety, rules that the overseer must enforce. These rules seem restrictive. Why can't they work 20 hours a day if they want to? Why can't they use cheaper materials if the contractor wants to cut costs? Why can't they ignore engineering standards to finish faster? The answer is clear. Without these rules, the aqueduct either wouldn't be built or would be built poorly and would collapse, killing everyone who relied on it. The rule limiting working hours ensures that workers don't exhaust themselves so much that they make mistakes. An exhausted worker makes errors. A tired worker moves slowly. A tired worker is a liability. The rule about materials ensures that only materials strong enough for the task are used. Weak materials, the structure fails. The rule about engineering standards ensures that the structure is sound, that it will last, that it won't collapse. These rules exist because people have already died in collapses of poorly built structures. These rules exist because Rome learned, through tragedy, what happens when you allow corners to be cut. Somewhere a builder is thinking about using cheaper materials. Somewhere else a builder is deciding against it. That's the rule working, not through enforcement, not through someone watching and punishing, but through the voice in his head saying, "No, you can't do that. You will be held responsible if it fails. If it fails, people will die. If people die because you cut corners, you'll be punished. You will be prosecuted. You might be executed. So you have to do this right. You have to follow the standards. You have to use proper materials." Pause. You continue walking through the forum, and you begin to see the pattern everywhere you look. Everywhere you look, rules are creating the conditions under which complex activities can take place. The rules about proper dress mean that you can read someone's status just by looking at them. You can understand their position in society. You can know how to interact with them. The rules about contracts mean that you can invest money in a business knowing that agreements will be honored, knowing that if the other person breaks the agreement, you have recourse. You can sue. You can get damages. The rules about engineering standards mean that you can walk under an aqueduct without fear that it will collapse on you, that it's been built to last. The rules about honest commerce mean that you can go to a market and buy goods without being constantly cheated, without being defrauded. Rules. Rules everywhere. So many rules. An endless web of rules. But each rule exists because someone, at some point in Rome's history, encountered a problem. The problem caused suffering. The Romans solved it by creating a rule. And now, centuries later, the rule has become so embedded in the culture that people follow it automatically, without thinking about it, without conscious effort. They follow it because it's the right thing to do, because it's what's expected, because it's part of being Roman. This is the genius of Roman civilization. Not that Rome created a lot of rules. That would be easy. Any society can create rules. But that Rome created rules that solved real problems. That Rome created rules that made sense. That Rome built a culture where people wanted to follow those rules. Where following the rules became part of their identity. Where breaking the rules felt shameful not because of fear of punishment, but because it violated their sense of who they were, their sense of what it means to be Roman. You pass a completed building, a beautiful structure with intricate decorative work, recently finished. It's stunning. The craftsmanship is evident in every detail. The stonework is precise. The columns are perfectly proportioned. The decorative elements are elegant. You know that this building was created under the rule that says if someone hires a craftsman to do work, the craftsman is legally liable if the work is poor quality. The craftsman could be sued. The craftsman could be forced to pay damages. The craftsman's reputation could be destroyed if word gets out that he does poor work. This rule has created an environment where craftsmen take pride in their work, where they do their best, where they don't cut corners because cutting corners might result in legal consequences, where a single shortcut might cost them their business. The person who commissioned the building knew this rule. When they hired the craftsman, they knew the craftsman would be careful. They could be confident in the result. And so they were willing to invest their money. And so the craftsman was willing to invest their time and skill. And so this beautiful building was created. A building that might stand for centuries. A building that brings beauty to Rome. A building that will outlive both the craftsman and the person who hired him. There's a principle here that applies to almost everything in Rome. The roads that connect the empire, built under rules that specify engineering standards, material quality, construction methods. The buildings that house the government, built under rules ensuring proper construction, stability, permanence. The aqueduct that bring water to the city, built under rules about durability and reliability. The laws that are enforced, created under rules about how laws must be created, what procedures must be followed, what rights must be protected. All of it. The entire structure of Roman civilization, built on top of rules. Pause. There's a law library, a building where legal documents are kept, where laws are written down, where anyone can go and look up the laws and understand what's expected of them. This is revolutionary. This is unique. Most civilizations keep the laws secret. The laws are known only to the rulers, only to the priests, only to the lawyers. The average person doesn't know what the law says, doesn't know what they're supposed to do, doesn't know what will get them in trouble. Rome publishes the laws. The laws are public. Anyone can read them. Anyone can know what the rules are. You can go to the library. You can look up the law. You can understand your rights and your obligations. This transparency is crucial. And because everyone can know what the rules are, because the rules are transparent and public, the rules have legitimacy. There's a rule that says new laws must be announced publicly before they take effect. A rule that says laws cannot be applied retroactively. You can't be punished for breaking a law that didn't exist when you did the act. A rule that says laws must be applied equally to everyone. The same law applies to senators and slaves, to wealthy merchants and poor workers. These are meta rules, rules about how rules are created and applied. And these meta rules are what give the entire system its legitimacy. People follow rules not just because they're afraid of punishment. People follow rules because the rules seem fair. Because they were created through proper procedures, because everyone knows what they are. When people follow rules because they seem fair and because they were created properly, they follow them more reliably, more completely, more voluntarily, than when they are following them purely out of fear of being caught and punished. Rome understood this. Rome built its system not just on enforcement, but on legitimacy. And that's one of the reasons Rome's civilization lasted so long and had such profound influence on everything that came after. You think about a specific aqueduct that was built 20 years ago. It's one of the great engineering achievements of the century. The aqueduct carries water from mountains 60 miles away. 60 miles. Imagine coordinating workers across 60 miles of terrain, bringing water to Rome through a series of arches and channels and underground pipes. The engineering is extraordinary. The coordination required is extraordinary. Thousands of workers, thousands of decisions, thousands of potential points of failure. But the aqueduct exists. It stands. It functions. Every single day, it brings clean water to Rome. It carries water that has traveled from the distant mountains. Pure water, clean water. And the reason it exists, the reason it was completed, the reason it functions, is because of rules. Rules about contracts, rules about engineering standards, rules about materials, rules about oversight, rules about accountability. The man who oversaw the construction of this aqueduct, a famous engineer named Frontinus, understood the rules. He understood that his reputation depended on the aqueduct being built correctly. He understood that if the aqueduct failed, if it collapsed, he would be held accountable. The blame would fall on him. His name would be remembered in infamy. He understood that his life's work, his legacy, his place in history depended on getting this right. So he was meticulous. He was careful. He tested every component. He oversaw every phase of construction. He made sure that the standards were met at every step. He didn't cut corners. He didn't compromise. He built it to last. And the rule that you're responsible for your work, that you can be sued if it fails, that your reputation is on the line, this rule motivated him to excellence. This rule made possible the creation of something that will last for centuries, something that will bring water to Rome long after Frontinus is dead, long after everyone who knew him is dead, something that will affect the lives of countless people who will never know his name. You walk over the aqueduct and feel the water flowing through the channels above you. The water is cool. It's clean. It's abundant. In Rome, people take water for granted. Water is available. Water is reliable. Water is something you turn on and use without thinking about it. But this is not true in other places. In other cities, water is scarce. Water is contaminated. Water causes disease. People get sick from the water. People die from the water. Rome is different because of engineering. Rome is different because of rules. You think about the implications of this. A civilization can be judged by the quality of its water, by its roads, by its buildings. A civilization can be judged by whether people can walk safely through the streets, by whether merchants can conduct business with confidence, by whether contracts are honored, by whether justice is administered fairly. All of these things depend on rules. All of these things depend on people following rules, enforcing rules, maintaining rules. Rome has figured out that civilization is not the absence of rules. Civilization is the presence of good rules, properly enforced, widely understood, internalized by the people who live under them. Rome has figured out that humans are capable of extraordinary things when we have the right rules. We can build aqueducts that last for centuries. We can create legal systems that function fairly. We can organize millions of people to work together toward common goals. But we can also do terrible things if the rules are wrong or if the rules are not enforced. You think about the times in Rome's history when the rules broke down. Times of civil war, when different armies fought for control. When normal legal processes were suspended. When might became right instead of law being right. You think about how quickly civilization can collapse when the rules fail. How quickly order descends into chaos. How quickly people start killing each other over petty disputes because there's no legal system to resolve those disputes. The rules are not just nice to have. The rules are essential. The rules are what stands between civilization and chaos. The rules are what makes possible not just the material achievements like aqueducts and roads and buildings, but also the social achievements, like trust, like commerce, like the ability to plan for the future. Pause. Your son Marcus is in the gymnasium and is learning the rules of physical training. He is learning from a trainer who's been training young men for 20 years. The trainer is strict, demanding. The trainer demands proper form. The trainer won't allow shortcuts. And Marcus, like all the young men in the gymnasium, understands that this strictness is not cruelty. The strictness is a gift. The strictness is what's making him strong. When Marcus first started training a few years ago, he was terrible, weak, slow. He didn't know proper form for anything. He would try to rush through exercises to get them finished, to move on to the next one, to rest. The trainer would stop him every single time. Again, the trainer would say, "Do it correctly. Do it with proper form." And Marcus would have to do the exercise over, with proper form, with full effort, with complete attention to the details of how it should be done. At first, Marcus hated this. He wanted to finish. He wanted to rest. He wanted to be done with the training. He wanted to be praised for his effort rather than his results. But slowly, over weeks and months, Marcus began to understand the rule that exercises must be done with proper form, that shortcuts are not allowed, that completing an exercise incorrectly is worse than not completing it at all. This rule was making him stronger. This rule was teaching him discipline. This rule was turning him into a man. There's a rule in Rome that young men must respect their trainers and follow their instructions precisely. This rule creates an environment where learning can take place. If young men could ignore their trainers, if they could decide which exercises to do and which to skip, if they could do exercises with improper form because they thought they knew better, they would not become strong. They would develop bad habits that would follow them for the rest of their lives. Weak habits, lazy habits. They would never reach their potential. So Rome created a rule, and this rule has the effect of creating young men who are strong, disciplined, capable. Pause. You remember your own training, years ago when you were Marcus's age. You remember your teacher, a man named Ptolemy who taught rhetoric and philosophy. Ptolemy was strict, demanding. Ptolemy demanded excellence. Ptolemy would not accept mediocre work. Ptolemy would make you stand up in front of the class and give speeches. Speeches about important topics. And then he would critique them, mercilessly. He would point out every logical fallacy, every awkward phrasing, every moment where your argument was weak, where you were making an unsupported claim, where you were appealing to emotion instead of reason. You hated it at the time. You thought Ptolemy was cruel. You thought he enjoyed making you feel humiliated. You thought he was sadistic, taking pleasure in your embarrassment. But now, years later, you understand that Ptolemy was giving you a gift. Ptolemy was teaching you how to think. Ptolemy was teaching you how to argue. Ptolemy was teaching you how to construct a logical argument and present it persuasively, how to think on your feet, how to respond to criticism, how to defend your ideas. These skills have been invaluable to you. These skills have made you successful in business. You can argue with other merchants. You can negotiate. You can make deals. These skills have made you respected in the forum. People listen to you because you speak well, because your arguments make sense. These skills have made you able to hold your own in any discussion, with anyone, regardless of their status. And Ptolemy understood something that you didn't understand at the time, that the only way to learn is to be pushed beyond what you think you're capable of. That comfort is the enemy of growth, that you need to be challenged, need to fail, need to be corrected, in order to truly learn, in order to grow, in order to become the best version of yourself. Ptolemy was following a rule, even though he probably didn't think of it as a rule. The rule was that a teacher should demand excellence from his students. The rule was that education should be rigorous. The rule was that learning requires effort and discomfort. These rules existed because Rome had learned, over centuries, what kinds of teaching produce competent, capable people, and what kinds of teaching produce mediocre people, weak people, people who can't think for themselves. You think about what Marcus is learning from his trainer, and you see in it the same pattern. The trainer is pushing Marcus. The trainer is demanding proper form. The trainer is not allowing shortcuts. And Marcus is becoming stronger because of it. Marcus is learning discipline because of it. Marcus is learning that excellence requires effort because of it. Marcus is learning that you don't get to take shortcuts. That quality matters. That how you do something matters. This is the pattern throughout Rome. Whether it's a child learning to read, or a young man learning to fight, or an apprentice learning a trade, the rule is the same. Excellence requires rigor. Excellence requires a teacher or mentor who is willing to push you, correct you, demand more from you than you think you're capable of. Your own father taught you this rule when you were young. Your father would assign you tasks, not because you needed to do the work, but because he wanted you to learn. He wanted you to learn how to do things properly. He would watch you work. If you did it carelessly, if you cut corners, if you tried to do it quickly instead of properly, your father would make you do it again. Your father would make you do it until you got it right. Your father would not accept mediocrity from you because your father understood that accepting mediocrity was a form of cruelty. It was condemning you to a mediocre life, to a life of struggle, to a life where you'd always be competing against better people who had learned to do things right. So your father was strict. Your father demanded excellence. And you learn from him that excellence was possible, that you were capable of achieving it, that the effort required to achieve excellence was worth it. Now, as an adult, you're passing this lesson on to your own son. You're watching Marcus at the gymnasium, working with his trainer, being pushed to his limits. And you're grateful. You're grateful that there are still trainers like this one. Still people who understand that true education is not about being nice to students, is not about making them feel good, is not about praise without justification. True education is about pushing them to be better than they think they can be. This is one of Rome's greatest achievements, though it's invisible. Though most people don't think of it as an achievement, Rome has created a culture where excellence is valued, where rigor is expected, where people are pushed to be better. And because of this culture, Rome produces people who are competent, skilled, capable of handling complex tasks and responsibilities. A mediocre Rome would be a Rome where teachers were nice, where standards were low, where students were never challenged. But that's not Rome. Rome has chosen rigor over comfort. Rome has chosen excellence over ease. And Rome has reaped the benefits of that choice in the form of a civilization that works, that creates beautiful things, that coordinates the efforts of millions of people toward common goals. Pause. But there's a cost to all of these rules. The cost is not in the restriction of freedom, although rules do restrict certain kinds of freedom. The cost is something different. The cost is a constant vigilance that's required to follow so many rules. The cost is the weight of responsibility. The cost is the awareness that you're being observed, not by police, not by authorities necessarily, but by everyone, by society, by your peers. The cost is the knowledge that a single misstep could result in severe consequences. You think about a man you once knew, someone named Cornelius, who broke one of Rome's rules. The rule itself seems minor when you think about it now, but the consequences were anything but minor. He served as a magistrate, which meant he had authority, power. He was trusted with public funds. He was trusted with making decisions about justice. But he also used that authority to enrich himself. He accepted bribes. He made rulings based not on law but on whether he'd been paid. This violates multiple rules. The rule that magistrates must serve the state, not themselves. The rule that bribes are forbidden. The rule that justice must be impartial. When the scandal broke, when people found out what Cornelius had been doing, the consequences were severe. He was sued. He was convicted. He was forced to pay massive fines, fines that stripped him of his wealth. His property was confiscated. His house was seized. His business was shut down. He was exiled from Rome. He lost everything. His wife suffered. His children suffered. Their whole family was destroyed. All of them exiled. All of them losing their status. All of them becoming non-persons in Roman society. And it happened not because of one decision, but because Cornelius allowed himself to believe that he was above the rules, that his status and power meant that the normal rules didn't apply to him, that he could take bribes without consequences, that no one would find out, that even if they did, he could use his power to avoid punishment. But Rome does not allow for people to be above the rules. Rome insists that everyone, regardless of status, is subject to the law. And when someone forgets this, when someone thinks they are too powerful to be held accountable, Rome reminds them, often in a way that destroys everything they built. You feel the weight of this. You feel the knowledge that you, too, are subject to the rules. You, too, could be prosecuted if you broke the law. You, too, could lose everything if you made a serious enough mistake. This knowledge is a burden. It's a constant pressure. It means you have to think before you act. It means you have to consider the consequences. It means you can't act purely on impulse or desire. You have to think about the rules and how your actions will be perceived in light of those rules. You have to consider whether what you want to do is against the rules, whether it would be seen as improper. Pause. Your wife, Livia, feels this burden in a different way. She is confined to her home. She cannot go where she wishes. She cannot do what she chooses. She must maintain her reputation. This means she must be careful about who she associates with. She must be careful about what she's seen doing. She must be careful about what rumors might attach themselves to her name. If she's seen walking with a man who is not her husband, people will gossip. They'll question her propriety. They'll wonder if she's engaged in improper behavior. If she's seen in a public place without a proper reason, people will question her. Why is she there? Why isn't she at home? Who is she seeing? If she's seen in an area of the city that isn't appropriate for women, people will talk. They'll spread rumors. And rumors, once spread, take on a life of their own. They grow. They become distorted. They destroy reputations. She has to live under constant scrutiny, constantly aware that her behavior reflects not just on herself but on her husband, on her family, on her household. She has to live knowing that a moment of carelessness could destroy her reputation and, by extension, the reputation of her entire family. A single moment, a single misstep, and everything is lost. She doesn't complain about this. This is the world she was born into. This is the world she's always known. But you notice sometimes that she seems tired. You notice that she seems burdened by the constant awareness of being watched, being judged, having to maintain the proper appearance of a virtuous woman. And you realize that the rules that keep Rome functioning also create a kind of psychological weight for everyone, but particularly for women who have fewer options for how to live their lives, fewer choices about what they can do, less freedom to act on their own desires. There's a rule that says women must stay home and manage the household. There's a rule that says women must be faithful to their husbands. There's a rule that says women must obey their husbands in matters of importance. And these rules are enforced by social pressure, by the threat of scandal, by the fear of being cast out from society, by the fear that your daughters will never marry well because your family's reputation is damaged. Your wife accepts these rules. She follows them, but you can see the cost. You can see the weight of it. And yet, and this is important, Livia is not powerless. Within her sphere, within the home, she has significant authority. She makes decisions about servants. She decides what food to buy. She determines how the household is organized. She manages the budget. She influences you through subtle persuasion. She shapes your children. She teaches them values. She guides their development. In some ways, her power is greater than it might initially appear. The rule that keeps her confined to the home also gives her a domain where she has near absolute authority. She is not free, but she is not powerless either. She is confined and powerful at the same time. Pause. Your son Marcus feels a weight of the rules in yet another way. He is expected to be strong. He is expected to be brave. He is expected to be able to fight. He is expected to be willing to defend Rome if called upon. He is expected to sacrifice himself if necessary. These expectations are not written down in any law, but they are enforced through social pressure, through the sneers of people who question his masculinity if it's seen as weak or cowardly, through the contempt of other young men, through the disappointment of his father. Marcus sometimes seems to you like he's carrying a burden that's too heavy for a young man. He's carrying the expectations of centuries of Roman military tradition. He's carrying the weight of the empire's need for strong men willing to fight. He's carrying the expectation that he should be ready to die for Rome, that he should put Rome before himself, before his own life, before his own happiness. And yet Marcus accepts this. He trains. He builds his strength. He learns the martial skills that Rome requires. He does this partly because he's afraid of the social consequences of not doing so, partly because he's internalized these values. He actually wants to be strong. He actually wants to be brave. He actually wants to be the kind of man that Rome values, the kind of man his father respects. The rules have worked. The rules have shaped him so completely that he wants the things that the rules tell him he should want. This is the genius of Roman civilization, and also its darkness. Rome has created a system where the rules are so completely internalized, where the expectations are so thoroughly embedded in the culture, that people don't just follow the rules out of fear. People want to follow the rules. People feel shame if they break the rules, even if no one finds out. People feel genuine pride in following the rules correctly. The rules have moved from external constraints to internal values. The rules have become part of who they are. But this also means that the people of Rome carry a heavy burden. The burden of constant self-monitoring. The burden of never being fully free to just be yourself. You are always aware of the rules. You are always aware that you're being evaluated, judged, compared to the standards that Rome has set. Even when you're alone, even when no one is watching, you're aware of the rules. You internalize the watching. You become your own judge, your own enforcer. The weight of Rome is heavier than you've ever noticed before. It's not a sudden wait. It's not something that just appeared. It's something that's been building your entire life. And only now, in this moment of reflection, are you becoming aware of it. The weight of following the rules, the weight of maintaining appearances, the weight of being the kind of person that Rome expects you to be. You think about the mistakes you've been careful not to make, the times you've bitten your tongue rather than saying what you really thought, the times you adjusted your behavior because you were aware that you were being observed, the times you've done something you didn't want to do because it was expected of you, the times you've sacrificed your own desires for the sake of maintaining your reputation, your family's reputation, your place in Roman society. Somewhere, a man is deciding not to go out drinking with his friends because he's aware that if he's seen drunk in the streets, people will judge him. He'll be seen as lacking self-control, as lacking proper Roman virtue. Somewhere, a woman is deciding not to wear a dress she loves because the color is slightly too bold and might attract unwanted gossip, might make people question her propriety. Somewhere, a young man is deciding not to pursue a career he's passionate about because it's beneath his social status, because it's not what's expected of someone of his class. All of these people are being constrained by the rules. All of these people are paying the cost of civilization. And yet, none of them are being physically forced to follow the rules. None of them are being imprisoned or tortured if they break the rules. They are simply aware of the social consequences. They are simply internalizing the expectations. They are simply doing what's expected because the expectation has become part of their identity, because they've been shaped by society to want what society wants them to want. This is a real cost of Rome. Not the oppression of a tyrant with a sword, not the brutality of a police state with officers on every corner, but the constant pressure to conform, to be the right kind of person, to follow the rules that everyone knows but no one explicitly states. The pressure is so constant that you don't even notice it most of the time. You just follow the rules. You just do what's expected. You just live within the boundaries that Rome has set. Pause. But here's a paradox. You wouldn't choose to live any other way. The freedom to act arbitrarily. The freedom to ignore the consequences of your actions on others. The freedom to do whatever you want without considering how it affects others. This kind of freedom sounds appealing in theory. But in practice, it's a kind of anarchy. It's chaos. In a world without rules. In a world where people could act on impulse without consequences, life would be chaotic, violent, unpredictable. You would constantly be afraid of what others might do. You would be unable to plan for the future. You would be unable to build anything lasting. You would be constantly competing with everyone around you for resources, for safety, for status. The rules, despite their weight, despite the burden they create, are worth it. They are essential. They make life possible. The rules make possible a world where you can walk through the city without fear, where you can conduct business knowing that agreements will be honored, where you can build things that will last, where you can raise a family knowing that there are rules to protect them, that there are standards of conduct that will keep your family safe. As the afternoon continues, you move through the streets of Rome, and you become more aware of the way that rules have created a kind of social fabric that holds everyone together. The rules don't just restrict individuals. The rules create relationships. The rules define how people relate to each other. The rules determine what's expected in different contexts, different situations. There's a man you know casually, someone you see occasionally in the forum. You've never been particularly close, but you acknowledge each other. You sometimes have brief conversations about business, about the news in the city. There's a rule that governs your relationship. You're both men of similar status. You're both Roman citizens. You both lived in Rome long enough to understand the customs. You both respect these customs. And so your relationship is characterized by a certain formality, a certain mutual respect, a certain distance. You wouldn't dream of asking him something too personal. You wouldn't dream of treating him with disrespect. The rule, the unwritten rule, defines a relationship. And because both of you understand this rule, the relationship functions smoothly. There are no misunderstandings. There are no awkward moments where one of you does something the other finds offensive. You simply follow the rule, and the relationship works. Then there's Titus, your slave. Your relationship with Titus is governed by very different rules. Titus is your property. You have the right to punish him. You have the right to command him. You have the right to sell him. You own him. But there's also a rule that says you shouldn't punish slaves excessively, that you should feed them adequately, that you should treat them humanely. This rule exists not out of kindness alone, although kindness plays a role, but out of pragmatism, out of practical necessity. If you treat your slaves too harshly, they'll rebel, they'll run away, they'll become useless to you, they'll plot against you. So Rome has created a rule about how slaves should be treated. And this rule has the effect of creating a relationship between master and slave that, while unequal, is not absolutely brutal. Titus knows what to expect from you. You know what to expect from Titus. The relationship is defined by rules. And because it's defined by rules, it's predictable, stable, functional. Your relationship with your wife is governed by yet another set of rules. There's a rule that a wife owes obedience to her husband. There's a rule that a wife should be faithful. There's the rule that a wife should manage the household properly. But there are also rules that protect your wife. There's a rule that says a husband cannot abuse his wife excessively. There's a rule that says a husband must support his wife. There's a rule that says a wife who is mistreated can seek protection from her family, can return to her father's house. So your relationship with Livia, while unequal, you have more authority than she does, is not absolute. It's governed by rules that protect her interests even as they subordinate her to your authority. She's not completely without rights. She's not your slave. Pause. And here's what's interesting. All of these relationships, governed by these different rules, create a community. Rome is not a place where people operate in isolation. Rome is a place where people are connected to each other by complex webs of relationships, all governed by rules. You have relationships with your family members, all governed by specific rules about what's expected in a family. You have relationships with your servants, governed by different rules about how servants should be treated. You have relationships with your equals, governed by rules about how equals should interact. You have relationships with people of higher status, governed by rules about deference and respect. You have relationships with people of lower status, governed by rules about authority and responsibility. A community is not a collection of individuals who happen to be in the same place. A community is a network of relationships, and these relationships are made possible by shared rules, by shared expectations, by shared understandings of how things should be done. When everyone understands the rules, when everyone knows what to expect from each other, when everyone knows what's expected of them, then a community can form. People can work together. People can trust each other. People can coordinate their efforts toward common goals. Rome is a community of millions of people. Most of them will never meet each other. Most of them will never even know that the others exist. But they are still connected by the shared rules, by the shared expectations, by the shared understanding of how Roman society works. A merchant in Rome, trading with a merchant in another city, knows that both he and the other merchant are bound by the same rules about contracts and commerce. A soldier serving in the military on the frontier knows that is connected to every other soldier through shared rules about military discipline and loyalty. A woman managing her household in Rome knows that she's connected to every other Roman woman through shared rules about virtue and propriety. The rules create a kind of social cohesion that holds Rome together, not through force, not through constant surveillance, but through shared understanding, through shared values, through the internalization of rules so complete that people feel genuine moral obligation to follow them, not just fear of punishment. Pause. There's a concept in Rome called pietas. It's often translated as piety or dutifulness, but it means more than that. It means a sense of obligation, a sense of duty, a commitment to fulfilling your role in the community, a commitment to doing what's expected of you, not because you're forced to, not because you're afraid of punishment, but because you genuinely feel that it's the right thing to do, because it's part of who you are. And pietas is what holds Roman society together. It's what makes the rules work. It's what makes it possible for Rome to function as a community rather than as a collection of individuals all pursuing their own interests without regard for others. When you follow a rule, when you do what's expected of you, when you fulfill your role in the community, you're acting out of pietas. You're acknowledging your connection to everyone around you. You're saying, through your actions, that you're part of something bigger than yourself, that you have obligations to the community, that you're willing to subordinate your individual desires to the good of the whole. Your son Marcus is learning pietas. He's learning that his individual strength is not the point. The point is what he can do with that strength to serve Rome. His learning that his role is to be a good citizen, a good soldier, a good member of the community. His learning that the rules are not restrictions on his freedom. The rules are ways of channeling his strength toward communal good. Your wife, Livia, embodies pietas. She's confined to her home, but she accepts that confinement because she understands that her role, that her management of the household, is crucial to the functioning of Rome. She's not sitting at home resenting her restriction. She's sitting at home, fulfilling her role, contributing to the community through the work she does, through the values she teaches her children, through the way she manages her household. You yourself feel pietas. You follow the rules not just because you fear punishment. You follow the rules because you genuinely feel that you should. You feel connected to the community. You feel obligated to do your part. And this feeling, this sense of duty, this commitment to your role in the community, this is what makes it possible for you to be a functioning member of Roman society. Pause. The sun is setting over Rome. You can see it from the street. That reddish glow on the horizon, that gradual dimming of the light that tells you the day is ending. You're walking home. Your day of business is done. Your role in the public sphere is ending. Your role in the private sphere is beginning. The transition is subtle but complete. You can feel it. The energy of the forum behind you. The quiet of home ahead of you. You think about the dinner that will be served tonight. There are rules about dinner. Rules about what should be served. Rules about how much should be served. Rules about who should be invited. Rules about how the guests should be arranged. Rules about what the order of courses should be. Rules about how long the meal should last. Rules about conversation during meals. These rules are not arbitrary. They are designed to facilitate social interaction, to create a context where important business can be discussed, where relationships can be strengthened, where people can gather in a structured, predictable way. You remember the rule about how many guests you can invite to a banquet. Different types of banquets have different guest lists. Different purposes have different requirements. You're not planning a banquet tonight, just a simple family dinner. But the rule is still in your mind. The rule is always in your mind. The rule is part of the fabric of your existence. You cannot escape it even if you wanted to, because the rule is not just an external constraint. The rule has become part of who you are, part of your identity. Pause. You arrive at your home. Titus greets you at the door. There's a rule about how slaves should greet their masters. There's a rule about the proper posture, the proper tone, the proper words. Titus follows it perfectly. He shows respect. He's eager to serve. He helps you remove your toga. He helps you clean your hands and feet. He prepares you for the evening. This interaction is governed by rules. But the rules have become so natural that neither you nor Titus even consciously thinks about them. You simply do what's expected. Titus simply does what's expected. And the interaction proceeds smoothly, without friction, without misunderstanding. Your wife has prepared the evening meal. The smell reaches you: bread, fish, vegetables, a wine that's been watered to the proper ratio. The meal is simple, not extravagant, but prepared with care, with attention to detail. Livia has followed the rules about how food should be prepared, about the proper ratio of different foods, about the balance that makes a meal healthy and nourishing. The rules about food preparation are not about taste alone, although good taste is nice. The rules are about health, about ensuring that the family is properly nourished, about maintaining the health of the household. Your son Marcus joins you. He's tired from his training. His muscles are sore. He stretches them gently, but is pleased with his progress. The trainer said today that he's becoming stronger, that his form is improving, that he's learning to move correctly. Marcus has accepted the rule that improvement comes through discipline, through following instructions precisely, through pushing yourself beyond what you think you can do. And Marcus has become a better version of himself because of the rule. The four of you sit down to eat. There are rules about how the meal should proceed, rules about conversation, rules about eating. You eat slowly. You don't talk too much during the meal. You don't eat too much. You don't display any signs of greed or excess. The meal is a meditation, a structured interaction where everyone knows what to expect, where everyone behaves according to the rules, where the family can gather in harmony. Pause. After the meal, there's a rule that says you should rest. Not sleep. Sleep comes later, when it's fully dark. But rest, a time to digest a meal, to let your body recover from the activities of the day, to prepare yourself for sleep. You lie on a couch. Livia sits nearby, doing her needlework, a textile craft that's both practical and calming. She works with focused attention, creating something that will last. Marcus goes to bed. Young men need more sleep than older men. The rule about proper sleep is strictly observed in your household. It's not arbitrary. It's based on experience, on what Rome has learned about how humans function, how the body heals, how the mind recovers. Your mind drifts. You think about all the rules you've experienced today. The rule about proper dress, the rule about proper greetings, the rule about how money should be changed, the rule about where work can be done, the rule about how arguments should be conducted, the rule about contracts, the rule about how buildings should be constructed, the rule about how food should be prepared, the rule about how meals should be eaten, the rule about how slaves should be treated, the rule about how family members should interact. So many rules, an endless web of rules, hundreds of them, thousands of them. They form the structure of your entire life. Every moment is governed by rules. Every action is constrained by rules. Every decision is made within the framework of rules. And yet, as you lie here, as your body relaxes, as your mind begins to drift toward sleep, you feel a strange kind of gratitude toward the rules. The rules have created the world you live in. The rules have created the conditions under which Rome can exist. The rules have shaped you, have made you who you are, have given you a role in the community, have connected you to everyone around you through shared understandings, through shared expectations, through shared values. The rules are not a burden. Or perhaps they are a burden, but they are a necessary burden, a burden you wouldn't choose to escape. The rules are the price you pay for living in a civilization rather than in chaos. The price you pay for being part of a community rather than being alone. The price you pay for building something that will last beyond your own lifetime. Something that will be remembered. Something that will continue to function long after you're gone. Pause. You think about all the people of Rome. Millions of them. All following the rules in their own way. All playing their own roles in the vast machinery of Roman civilization. You think about the merchants who follow rules about honest commerce. You think about the soldiers who follow rules about military discipline. You think about the women who follow rules about virtue and propriety. You think about the slaves who follow rules about obedience. You think about the magistrates who follow rules about justice. You think about the engineers and builders who follow rules about construction. All of them, following their own rules, creating together a civilization that functions, that creates beauty, that builds things that last, that coordinates millions of people toward common purposes. You realize that you've never really thought about it this way before. You've accepted the rules as natural, as simply the way things are. But now, as you rest, as you prepare for sleep, you understand that the rules are not natural. The rules are created. The rules are maintained. The rules are fragile in a way because they depend on everyone choosing to follow them, on everyone choosing to internalize them, on everyone choosing to feel moral obligation toward them rather than just fear of punishment. But the rules are also strong because they've been maintained for so long, because they've been so thoroughly internalized, because people genuinely believe in them, because people genuinely feel that they're the right way to organize society. And as long as people continue to believe in the rules, as long as people continue to internalize them, as long as people continue to feel moral obligation toward them, Rome will continue to function. Rome will continue to create beauty. Rome will continue to build things that last. Pause. The light is fading. The sun has set completely. Your home is lit only by oil lamps, by the soft, flickering light that creates shadows, that makes the world seem smaller, more intimate, more connected to the eternal darkness that surrounds everything. You feel yourself drifting toward sleep. Your body is heavy. Your mind is slow. The weight of the day is draining away, replaced by the weight of sleep, of rest, of the temporary abandonment of consciousness. You think about tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be more rules to follow. Tomorrow there will be more roles to play. Tomorrow there will be more interactions governed by expectations, by tradition, by the accumulated wisdom of centuries. Tomorrow you will wake and dress according to the rules. You will greet people according to the rules. You will conduct business according to the rules. You will eat according to the rules. You will speak according to the rules. You will move through Rome following the rules that have been created over centuries, the rules that will persist long after you're gone. And you realize that this is not a tragedy. This is not something to mourn. This is the nature of civilization. This is what it means to be part of something larger than yourself. This is what it means to be part of Rome. To be Roman. To have internalized the values of Rome so completely that you can't imagine being anything else. Your breathing deepens. Your eyes grow heavy. The boundaries between your conscious mind and sleep begin to blur. The rules continue their work. The rules continue to hold Rome together. The rules continue to create the conditions under which civilization can flourish. The rules continue their eternal work, shaping human behavior, creating order from chaos, building something beautiful from the raw material of human life. And so, like the citizen of Rome after a long day of following the rules, living within the structure that keeps civilization functioning, you too can rest now. You can let yourself sink into sleep. You can let go of the weight of the day, the weight of following the rules, the weight of playing your role in the community. The rules will still be there tomorrow. Rome will still be there tomorrow. The vast machinery of civilization will continue to function tomorrow, maintained by the rules, maintained by people following the rules, maintained by the shared understanding that the rules are necessary, that the rules are right, that the rules are what make it possible for Rome to exist. The darkness deepens around you. Your thoughts grow slower. Your breathing becomes steady and deep. You sink further into rest, further into peace, further into the ancient, eternal sleep that has called the human since the beginning of time. The rules have done their work. The rules have shaped your day. The rules have made your life possible. And now, in sleep, you rest from the rules, knowing that they will be there when you wake. Holding Rome together. Holding civilization together. Holding the world together. Sleep well. Sleep deeply. Sleep knowing that history continues its gentle rhythm. Sleep knowing that Rome endures. Sleep knowing that the rules, for all their weight, for all their burden, are the foundation upon which everything you love is built up. Please like and subscribe our channel. Sleep well.